Everyone is talking about AI. At IU, we are too. In this segment of AI and You, we will talk with Dr. Hmelo Silver and Dr. Leftwich from the Indiana University School of Education. I'm your host, Kevin Jones.
From the Indiana Public Media Met Studio on the campus of Indiana University, this is State of Inquiry, a video podcast series of expert-led conversations highlighting the impact of IU research. In this season, Dr. Kevin Jones guides us through AI and You, navigating the new frontier. Over the course of 4 episodes, speaking with experts, innovators, and everyday people, reshaping what we know and how we live. Dr. Jones is an AI strategist at IU Columbus and a thought leader and educator with over 30 years of experience empowering workforces and integrating innovative technologies ethically. He has served as leader of the 2024 Indiana University Generative AI Task Force and a panel moderator of the World Summit AI Conference. I'm Eddie Stewart. This is episode 1 of 4 of AI and You, Navigating the New Frontier.
We're incredibly fortunate to have Dr. Hmelo Silver joining us today. She's a leading expert in applying AI to education as a professor of learning sciences at Indiana University. Dr. Hmelo Silver has done groundbreaking work in problem-based learning and as the education lead on the National Science Foundation-funded EngageAI Institute. That's a mouthful right there. She has been working with an interdisciplinary team to take these lessons to use AI as part of educational games to help students in learning science. Thank you so much for being with us, Cindy.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me.
Glad to have you. So first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to focus on AI research?
So I am professor of learning sciences, as you mentioned, and I study how people learn, and particularly about how they learn about complex things. So stuff that's really hard to learn in science or in teaching or in medicine. So I've worked across from elementary school kids to teachers to medical students. And one of the things that has really interested me is how we help people learn to do collaborative problem solving and engage deeply as they learn science. And watching students take the lead in their learning, as well as watching teachers also be able to support students in doing these interesting kinds of inquiry learning opportunities.
Wow. Lot to cover, lots of work as well, eh? Now, let me ask you this question here is, what do you see as the most significant impact of your research?
So for the past 10 years or so, we've been developing AI-enabled applications and resources to support both students and teachers in complex and collaborative problem solving. For students, we've been designing learning environments that respond to student ideas, support their collaborative problem solving, and open up access to ambitious learning. For teachers, we use AI to analyze group discussions and student interaction patterns to help them make informed, timely decision. But what's really important is that we've been working both in interdisciplinary teams of computer scientists, learning scientists, instructional design, but also that we've involved students and teachers as partners as part of the co-design. So we really think hard about how do we put humans in the loop? How do we do our work with teachers and learners that has them be active decision makers and problem solvers, and where they can work synergistically with the AI.
All right, so students and teachers working together with AI. Some people think that AI is a separate and distinct entity, but you're saying that you're using AI first developing capabilities of teachers, developing capabilities of students and then putting those together to learn. How does that work?
Well, I would say we are using teachers to help develop the capabilities of AI.
I see.
And so we look at what are the issues that teachers find challenging in the classroom or the opportunities that we see where AI might be helpful. So one example is if we've got 5 different collaborative problem-solving groups. Some groups are doing great, but they need the teacher to just come over and let them know that. Some groups are struggling a bit, and the teacher might have ways to help. So we think about what do the teachers need, what do the students need, and how can we use AI to support both of them? Are there places we can support the students directly in ways that get them thinking about the content that they're learning, how they're solving problems, how they're working together as a team, and how can we give information to the teachers where they can make actionable decisions doing what they do best.
I see. You mentioned the term human in the loop. Tell us what that means.
It means we don't set the AI loose on the classroom to take over. It means that the AI may provide information, but for example, the teacher is the ultimate decision maker. Or we might provide suggestions to students about what they might do to work together better. But the students ultimately get to decide, am I going to follow this? Or maybe I need more suggestions, I'll ask the AI. So I think this provides both opportunities to use the AI productively, as well as opportunities for both teachers and learners to think critically about what is the AI telling them. Does this make sense? Do I need to listen? Or does it give me some ideas that may help me go in another direction, but that was helpful nonetheless?
So clearly, your research would indicate that we need to engage with the AI. We can't say, let's ban it, let's stay away from it, let's try to avoid it, let's police students' usage. Your perspective seems to be very much engaging with AI.
Very much so. But we also want students and teachers to understand what AI is, what it can do, what it can't do, and that and both the positive possibilities as well as the challenges and ethical issues that go along with it. So in addition to using AI in our various software tools, we also are teaching kids about AI. So we're teaching upper elementary students about AI ethics, and about how some of the underlying technologies work so that they can be informed about what they're doing. And again, if we've got humans in the loop, we also need the humans to understand as much as they can about AI. And when we started working with elementary school kids, probably about 5-6 years ago, that didn't seem to make a lot of sense. But of course now it does.
Yes. The emergence of generative AI has changed a lot. Well, let's even move towards some of what you spoke to. Is education always has a powerful implication for society in general. And let's talk about these technologies a little bit. And basically, how do you foresee that work task, and this can be educational work tasks and roles, or can be the general population jobs, how do you see these things changing? And let's start with teachers, for example, in the next 1 to 3 years.
Well, I think we know that teachers are using generative AI for things like lesson plans, for probably help with looking at student work, and in various automated tools that can help with grading, that use natural language processing. I mean, I think the advances in natural language processing are huge. But I think more interesting is can teachers use this to help them understand what's going on in their classrooms and be able to have learning environments that allow for more of this kinds of collaborative inquiry where we're thinking of students as thinking and reasoning and learning how to learn. And the teachers are learning how to learn because there's these new technologies. So understanding what the technologies can do. And I think for the teachers in the next 1 to 3 years, there's going to be a lot of exploration, trying to understand what the landscape is. The tools are changing. They're going to keep changing. I think one question is what kinds of constraints and guardrails will we have for using AI in educational settings? Policing doesn't work, as you mentioned. I think, when ChatGPT came out first, there was oh no, we've got to keep this out, and then it's thinking about how can we harness this productively. In most of the work we do, we try to use AI tools that don't feed students' data in because we are concerned about privacy and issues of bias.
Yes.
So we do try to use more constrained language models.
So you mentioned about learning how to learn. Say more about that and how that is changing the work of a teacher.
So I think for the teachers, so I think there's always been this tension between we have to cover all the content and how do we let students work on things that they're truly interested in, or that we can set up learning situations that make things interesting. So my work on problem-based learning has really focused on how do we set up a problem that kids don't know how to solve, but they have to learn the material that they would need to solve it. And it should cover the content in the class, but it may not get all the way there. It may cover some other things, but an important piece is the kids have to learn how to learn. And similarly, the teachers have to learn how to use different resources, which resources are more trustworthy, and how can they curate some of these for their classrooms? What are the tools that their school districts are providing for them? And how do they judge both their usefulness as well as if I take this much time to learn this tool, is it going to help me in helping kids learn?
Sure.
So will it allow me to do my job more effectively?
So is it true that this is an experimental aspect and that we really don't have best practices because we're learning, or do we have best practices, or is the research emerging that?
I think we're building the plane as we're flying it. I think some of these are emerging. I think some of the best practices that are happening now are, I think, teaching about skepticism.
Oh.
That, knowing that if you, and this goes a little bit beyond my research, but knowing that if you put a prompt in to ChatGPT or some other generative AI tool, you really have to look at what comes out. You have to double check it. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing, because I think you've probably had to do that with search engines for a long time. But now as if you use ChatGPT to help you in writing, you need to really look at what it's producing. Is it and where do you use it? Maybe for brainstorming it's helpful, but you don't want to ask it to write your whole essay.
Right, right.
But whatever it gives you, you need to double check. Is this right? And I think similarly for teachers, if they ask for help in generating content, it still is incumbent on teachers to make sure that what they're working with is trustworthy, is accurate, and I think that need for skepticism, I think, can help promote critical thinking. Critical thinking.
Yeah, so there's a number of competencies that seem to be coming out here. Critical thinking, a term, I'd use the term discernment, and collaboration seems to be heightened in this environment. And from what I'm hearing is, while this is occurring in the education space, this has implications for our future workforce as well. So when we think about the type of students that are being developed now, what do you see in the future? What types of students are we producing through education with AI?
Well, I think this gets back to the human in the loop piece. I think it's about how do we use AI to do the tasks we want to do without giving up our agency. And I've used the word agency a couple of times because I think it's important that we recognize that the humans should be the final arbiter rather than just because AI told you.
Yes, yes. So the human in the loop, we can't emphasize that enough. So to conclude, I'm going to ask you just one very broad question, and there's no one answer to this. It's just the idea of what are the challenges or concerns that we should have to address proactively as AI becomes more integrated into our environment, our lives, et cetera?
I think there's a whole lot of ethical issues there in thinking about privacy, first of all. I've got my Echo on because I want to be able to set my kitchen timers and put my shopping list on there.
Yes.
But I also know that it is listening to
collecting our data.
Collecting our data.
I do the same.
So I think we have to be concerned about privacy and hallucinations where AI just makes stuff up.
Yes.
So I think those are important. Thinking about bias, that AI is only as good as what it's trained on, which probably does not represent, not probably, it doesn't represent diverse populations. And I think there's the transparency piece. We don't know exactly why all this works, and it should make us uncomfortable.
Yes, yes.
I think as we can get AI that can explain its reasoning, then again, as humans in that loop, we can make judgments. But it's not always clear right now.
Understood. So this is evolving, this is growing. The role of the educator is essential. I so appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about AI and you.
Thanks. It's an exciting time.
This has been incredibly impactful, and I thank you again for joining us here on AI and You. Thank you. Everyone is talking about AI. At IU, we are too. In this segment of AI and You, we will talk with Dr. Ottenbreit-Leftwich from the Indiana University School of Education. I'm your host, Kevin Jones. Welcome to AI and You, Dr. Ottenbreit-Leftwich.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Kevin Jones.
We're so pleased to have Dr. Leftwich with us today. She's Associate Vice President for Learning Technologies at Indiana University and the Barbara B. Jacobs Chair in Education and Technology. Her work is profoundly significant as she pioneers the integration of AI into K-12 and post-secondary education, ensuring equitable access and preparing both students and educators for an AI-rich learning environment. So, lots there. You're doing some good work. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your research. Tell us.
Absolutely. So I like to consider myself a temporarily retired elementary school teacher. I love being in the classroom and working with students. My initial research started with looking at technology in general and what sort of things encourage teachers to adopt and use technology in their classrooms. This has evolved over time. So even though my early research focused on K through 12 education and specifically how teachers adopted and integrated into the classrooms, over time I started asking deeper questions. So to say, are we just teaching students how to use technology, or are we helping them understand it well enough to transform it for more impactful purposes? And that evolution from use to understanding to transformation has really been central to my work, especially as artificial intelligence has entered into the mainstream within K-12 and now and also post-secondary. As a recent example, has really brought this to life in my own life. My fifth grade, now they're going to be sixth grade, but during fifth grade, my twin daughters, they designed an AI chatbot to help classmates navigate real-life fifth grade concerns. Because, of course, mom doesn't understand what it's like to be in fifth grade. So they trained the model with their own vernaculars using words like skibbity and slay and all of the other terms that middle schoolers use, and then also built in Socratic-style questioning. And the goal was to create something that would be able to answer questions about what should they be doing in fifth grade, how should they be doing this in a more objective, unbiased way. What blew me away was when they realized that their chatbot was actually biased based on the training materials they were providing. So they had asked it if it's okay to be, a question about dating, and we have a rule in our house that was something that's not okay, right? So they said, well, we're going to go back then and train our chatbot. And what they got out of that was, well, what would happen if somebody else's family that said that is okay, right? So recognizing that their bias and the things that they're putting into the AI may change the output for other individuals. So they are using it, students at a young age have the capacity to understand how to use AI, what goes into it, and what the outcomes might be if we provide them with the opportunity to do that. So for me, it's always folks are a lot more capable than we give them credit for at all ages. And so trying to figure out how do we provide that to individuals at the youngest age possible so that they do understand what their data is, what it's being used for, how they can transform society, how they can answer larger questions and solve problems from their viewpoint because their viewpoint matters.
Wow. Fifth graders.
Yes.
And right there, I think, is a message for the listeners of this to understand that fifth graders using generative AI. So what does that say for adults? Where are we with that? In fact, let's even get right to that. So when we think about current AI technologies, so as you mentioned, your daughters are using AI technology, but one of the things I think people are not always clear on is what AI exists right now and what is present right now. And eventually we'll talk about the future, but what are some of those technologies that people are using today that may be affecting how we think, and they may not even realize how our work has changed, how we're living differently due to these AI tools?
Absolutely. So we often think of AI as something futuristic, right, or only tied to tools like ChatGPT. But in reality, AI has been embedded in our daily lives for years, sometimes in ways that we barely notice, right? So traditional AI, not necessarily generative, powers things like your spam filter in Gmail, or how Google Maps predicts traffic and adjusts your route in real time, or when you ask Alexa or Siri to remind you to pick up groceries. Yeah. That's AI doing voice recognition and natural language processing. And even your iPhone's face recognition uses deep learning. So if you parked in a big city, maybe there's dynamic pricing and parking meters that's driven by AI, with surge pricing for Uber or Lyft, or even tools like Grammarly or Google Docs now go beyond grammar, and they rewrite and reframe some of your sentences using generative AI. But beyond that, AI is also showing up in more critical areas like financial institutions, using it to flag fraudulent charges within seconds, often before you even notice them, or in healthcare where AI systems are helping radiologists detect patterns in imaging scans that might otherwise be missed. So whether you're booking a flight, applying for a job, or even just scrolling through TikTok, there's AI in there that's shaping the experiences behind the scenes.
I see. And has evolved to this point where it is somewhat ever-present. And that being said, one of the things that people are very concerned about is work tasks and work roles changing. So what do you foresee are the ways that work and roles will change and maybe over the next 1 to 3 years? And you can speak either in the context of education or the workforce in general.
Yeah. So AI is already changing what work looks like in education, but the bigger shift is coming in how we define our roles, especially in my mind in higher education. So if a student can use AI to summarize research draft essays or even solve equations, then we have to ask, what do they need us for? And the answer, I think, is coaching, mentoring, helping students develop the judgment and the critical thinking skills that AI can't replace. Which means faculty need to move from content delivery, which AI can increasingly handle, to being more guides through complexity. We're becoming mentors in ethical reasoning, in idea development, and how to ask better questions and not just give better answers. So in K-12, we're also seeing a similar shift where AI can personalize learning at a scale that has not been matched ever before. Tutors can adapt to a student's pace or explain a science concept in kid-friendly terms or even in a way that relates to them. So thinking about economics principles, someone who's really interested in sports can ask for examples can you talk to me about what these kind of limited ideas around supply and demand when we're talking about in a particular football example, or if we're interested in social media, tell me how this applies to social media or to TikTok or to influencers, right? So students are getting specific examples that relate to them, and they can really start to understand these ideas as opposed to a teacher going through and trying to come up with 30 different examples, or in the case of higher education, 300 different examples to try and get students to understand the concepts that we're at here. So across both K-12 and higher ed, the task level changes are big, where AI might write first drafts or make summaries or generate ideas. But the role level change, that's what's bigger. And educators have to stop measuring their value by what they know, and they have to start leading by what they can cultivate in others, this discernment, this originality, the ethics, the resilience. And frankly, that's the work we should have been doing all along, is how are we capturing the learning? How do we facilitate the learning with our students?
Yeah, some people have said that this is exposing some of our weaknesses in our educational enterprise, and we have an opportunity now to strengthen it with AI. But that being said, you and I both know that some people will say, well, how do we know that this is good? And where is the demonstrated best practice, and where's the research that proves this is good, which is a good thing to question and to critically assessed, but it seems like it kind of is more of saying, do we really have to change, right?
Right.
And so what types of things would you say to folks who are recognizing what for some of us is obvious, our work and our roles are changing? What do you say to them?
So recognizing that there's always, there's no one clear answer, right? And there's lots of variability in here of how we talk about and how we try and push change. But knowing that change is necessary, it will be happening. And really, AI has just become a Trojan horse to sneak in the pedagogy and the things that we want to change. We know that it is critically important. In some instances, someone could be an amazing lecturer, right? Like I'm a faculty member that I love to get up and do a good lecture. I know you do too,
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
This is the fun opportunity to be able to explain what it is that we do and have different ways to reach individuals in the storytelling piece. There are some individuals that are so good at it. Think about like all the TED Talks and things that we listen to, right?
Yes.
Those are exceptional, and those necessarily are not replaced by AI, right? But there are so many instances in which we get up and we will go through a PowerPoint presentation with our students, and it's not getting them to where they need to go. Or they could be listening to these things at home or interacting with the content or coming up with ideas. When they come to class, we should be working on iterating, that coaching, that mentoring, those different things that we can do in order to pull out the learning moments and give them feedback. Those are the points where I think we need to look at what it is we're doing and how we're doing that as educators. I recently met with a faculty member around talking about a biology example where they used in their class, they had students summarize different lab reports, right, to say here's how these labs are set up and this is what this should look like. And they said, well, with AI, the students are just uploading that and getting a summary of it now instead of summarizing it themselves. So the question is, well, what's the learning objective? Well, the learning objective is that you want students to be able to understand there are different reasons for why you set the lab up different ways. And I said, well, that's fantastic. Now you've got this article and maybe put a couple of other articles up there, and now the student engages in conversation to say, how is this lab set up? Why was it set up this way? How could it have been set up differently? What are the pros and cons of setting it up this way? So now the student has interacted with the content in a way that allows you to have a much richer conversation when you come into the class. Right now it becomes a debate of, all right, now I've got this new situation. How do you all think we should set up the lab? Give me a couple of different options, or here's different options. Debate back and forth about why this one way might be better than another.
Yeah. And sometimes I do like to, as I say it, pull my age card on people. When people are kind of resistant to some of the changes, I say, well, back in 1980 when I was in the classroom, yes, in the third grade elementary classroom in 1980, there were some things different. And now, okay, this is 2025, things are a bit different now. So what do? We adapt. But I won't talk more on that. I'll let you do the talking on that. So let's go ahead. Let's look at this. And looking ahead, what do you see are additional AI technologies that are on the horizon that you believe that will continue to impact our work and our personal lives over the next 1 to 3 years or further out?
Yeah, I think the crazy thing is AI changes so rapidly, right? What it is able to do and capable of doing. Obviously, agentic and agents being able to serve on our behalf and being able to code them or tell them what it is that we want to do. I think that's going to be a huge impact on everything that we do. But really, in the next few years, I think AI is going to be transformational, not just in what we can do, but in how we do it. Mm-hmm. So it's already beginning to take some of those routine cognitive tasks off of our plate. And we all know we're being asked to do more and more with fewer resources. So figuring out how to take some of that administrative burden off is going to be super important so that we can focus more on the creativity, on the strategy, and even rest. Wouldn't that be lovely for mental health? So, but we're already seeing it summarize our meetings or draft documents or pull together resources from scattered sources. But what's really exciting is how seamless this is becoming. So, for example, I've uploaded dense policy reports onto Google Notebook. And then as I'm driving up to Indianapolis, I can have it listening, or I can listen to it and then even interact with it back and forth, right? Asking questions as I'm going up, and trying to figure out what actually this report means. What does it mean to IU? What does it mean to our strategic opportunities? What are different ways to be able to do that? And then the other thing that I've been doing recently is when I'm on a walk with my dog, then talking to ChatGPT and asking it to come up with one question at a time in order to help me draft a conference proposal that I would put forward. So it's all my words, right? But it's someone that I'm talking to back and forth, capturing my words and then putting it in an organized way, so that I can go back, check through it, and then be able to submit it. So that has expanded my productivity incredibly. In education, that same shift is happening where AI tutors can now adapt to how a student learns, changing explanations on the fly, offering personalized practice. That's one of the things I've actually done this entire summer with my kids, is keeping them on track by creating personalized worksheets by uploading the Indiana state standards. Wow. And saying, here's the type of questions that I would like to work on based on what their test scores were at the end of the school year. So here, like, one needed to work more on measurement, whereas the other needed to work more on number operations. So I was able to customize, and then I just go back on every day and say, give me another worksheet, give me another worksheet. And it kept up with each one of their different needs, so that they had just little bits of practice over the summer. So that personalization to not just connect to their interests, but also exactly what they need to be learning and how they need to be learning it, it's a game changer for equity. We're no longer designing one size fits all. We're starting to design for every learner. And that's what we even get with Netflix or with Amazon or all of these other options, right? Is once we start to identify more about what an individual needs, we can customize it.
So in your perspective is that of a learner, is that you're not saying, okay, when I learn how to use these tools, I'm finished. It sounds like you're a continuous learner and you are seeking ways to find the opportunities the tools provide. And when we think about that, what are some practical ways that individuals can prepare themselves for this transition of work?
So I think the best way to think about it is, again, utilizing AI on a regular basis, and utilizing it in ways that you might not think of, or even just to start with the personal ways. So I know some of the great ways that people will start to use it on a personal basis to feel more comfortable. Take pictures of things that are in your fridge and ask, what could I make myself for dinner, right? Mm-hmm. I've also taken pictures of, for example, the back of my TV and my stereo system, right? To figure out, how do I set up my surround sound because it's not working? And after talking back and forth with it, I found out, well, my particular TV does not support output of audio. So that was a problem, and I needed to find different switches in order to make that happen. So different ways that you could use it personally, or even, for example, and I wouldn't necessarily say use it as a counselor or, someone to help solve problems, yes. But sometimes when there might be interactions with my children, right? How do I figure out how to talk with them about these different situations? How do I kind of, not discipline types of things, but how do I help them understand the perspective of the other? Mm-hmm. So just even wording or different ways to explain it. And then it also takes the bias out of that kind of interaction. It's someone to bounce ideas off of. So trying to start using it on a personal note might help you start to understand how to then do it in a professional context. Now, as professors, right, we are passionate about our particular area. So I get excited about using it in my workplace
Sure.
and trying to figure out new, creative, fun ways to do that. Asking AI how to use AI is wonderfully appropriate and yields some of the best examples, right? So I'm saying, I want to come up with a really great prompt in order to do this, right? So one of the things that I was asking it today is, I want to come up with a really good prompt that will help me analyze my emails to get a prompt to help write future emails based on my tone, right? So it said, all right, well, first, here's what I want you to do. So it actually had like a outline of it. Let me find it for a second, because I think it actually was that. It was really good. And so it was, analyze a section of my recent outgoing emails, identify the level of formality, common vocabulary choices, emotional tone, for example, empathetic, direct, enthusiastic, and typical sentence structure. Provide a brief summary with clear examples so I can guide AI-generated emails accordingly. So then after that, it came out with, here's how you like to answer emails. You're bright, cheery, use exclamation points too much. You end with a, whatever it is that you end with. And then I said, now I'd like you to take an email that I haven't responded to yet and create an example of what that response might look like. And it was great. It was definitely in my tone and the words that I would use. So asking AI, like, what is possible or what can I do with this, that's usually a really great place to start.
And see, what you've given are some practical steps for people to engage more deeply with the technology. And one of the things I want to get you to speak to is that it is basically a mindset, though. What I'm hearing from you, as I mentioned earlier, you're a learner. You have an open mind. And there's something else, too. So could you speak to the fact that it doesn't always work exactly the way you may expect it to work? What do you do in those situations? Because I hear from people all the time about, it makes errors, it hallucinates. So how do you deal with those things?
So I think with any AI output, the most important thing is the human in the loop, right? So you absolutely need to be looking at all of your materials. You need to be verifying what's there, looking at whatever the sources are. A lot of the things that I've talked about today, it's not as critical to validate sources or figure out other things, because again, you're the human in the loop. You should be able to see whether or not this wording is okay, whether or not you can respond to someone in this matter. So I think that point is critically important. The human in the loop, figuring out what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and then again, reinforcing that with the AI. So saying, this is not right. Like, you didn't add these different points in. Here are the things that I really want you to consider. In some cases, when the AI just isn't listening to me, I will open up a new chat window and try and start again, right? Because sometimes it is pulling from something that you've mentioned or some document that you've uploaded. I remember getting really frustrated at one point in time because it kept coming up with communication pieces in what I was trying to create. I'm like, I don't want to talk about communication. So I started a new chat and it was fine. And I went back and looked. It was because I had uploaded the wrong document about communication, right? So it was definitely drawing on those things. So there could also be some human error in there as well. But I have found that the more detail that I put into a prompt makes a difference. Any examples that I can put in there, we like to put out this idea around, like with prompting, using the core principles. So the context, so explaining the context, what's going on around that particular instance. Then the outcome or the objective, what do you want this to look like in the end? The R being the role. So what role do you want it to take on? Do you want it to be a strategic planner? Do you want it to be a communications expert? Do you want it to be a decision maker, an event planner? Whatever it is that you want it to be, ask that, because then it'll take on a particular role. And then finally, examples. So any kind of materials or what you might want this to look like, anything else that you can put up there for it to iterate on will help yield better results.
And see, what I'm hearing from you is the measure of an effective educator. That is, use whatever you can use to become better.
Yes.
And that's what it sounds like you're doing, and you're sharing your learning with others.
Thank you. Can I add one more?
Oh, please do.
All right. So the one other thing that I do want to talk about is one of our projects is called Primary AI, and that particular curriculum is 3rd through 5th grade artificial intelligence, and it's integrated into life sciences. So on that particular project, that was actually my sabbatical project, I think in 2022, 2022. And I went around and taught it to over 500 3rd through 5th graders. And based on that curriculum, we did Introduction to AI, AI ethics, AI planning, machine learning, and then computer vision. And students at the 3rd through 5th grade level, we saw improvements on all of their conceptual understandings. And they were able to articulate and talk about AI. And the reason why I think it was so successful is because we used a lot of analogies and things that they would understand. So as we were talking about data, for example, or computer vision, we were discussing on humans, for example, 70% of how they build their understanding of the world happens to be based on what we see around us. But if we're talking about snakes, for example, snakes build their understanding of the world based on vibrations and infrared. So when we're looking at like vibrations, if it's a big vibration, right, like maybe we'll rate that as number 10,
Yes.
then that would likely be a predator. But if it's small little vibrations, it's most likely going to be like a mouse, right? So that would be prey. So if we're looking at numbers and talking about numbers and how it's inputted, now we start to see how a computer is also understanding its world as well, right? Because computers are understanding with numbers, and that's how we input things. There's so many different ways to gather data and to start to better understand the world. That's one example where I think when we start talking with students about what is capable for AI, they're better able to understand how computers are gathering information, what that could look like, what the opportunities are.
Yeah, so, and when hearing about that fabulous research that you're doing, how does that inform practice from your perspective?
So that informs how students can conceptualize and think about artificial intelligence, right? So the conceptual pieces around if we better understand how data can be used and how we can design systems in the future, right? So maybe in the future, as I'm thinking about designing my own, like thinking about traffic, right, at Indiana University Bloomington, it's not maybe just about counting cars, but maybe how fast cars are going. What about when somebody is walking down the street, and how can I collect data on that, and where they're crossing, and at what times are they crossing, and where have accidents been? There's so many different data points that you can draw from in order to better create and inform an AI outcome. That's really what we want our students to think about, is to get a better conception of, as they build things, which we know that they will likely be building things or talking to AI, how do we get them to think about broader context and broader capabilities from what data to draw from, and how to ethically code that, right? So in the instance of my daughters, as they were thinking about ethics and bias and what data goes in there, what other things could we have used to make a more well-rounded 5th grade app? Maybe there's a 5th grade app that exists for 5th grade girls versus 5th grade boys, right? Maybe there's an app that exists for rural students versus non-rural students. So anybody could even talk to it and say, I like my app to be a little bit more snarky, or I like my app to be like just reinforcing everything that I say and give me positive feedback. So there's so many different ways as we're thinking about not just the coding of it, but also like what data are we putting in it. That's the critical point that I think individuals need to understand about how AI works in order to use it well.
So it sounds like greenfield of opportunity for educators, right?
Yes.
Plenty, as the term we used to use in consulting. And I think we need more people like you, Dr. Ann Leftwich, who are bullish on the opportunity, who are willing to say, let's do some things, let's learn more, let's research, and we'll all benefit from our active engagement with this technology. Well, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us here at AINU, and thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
You've been listening to State of Inquiry from IPM.org, recorded at the Indiana Public Media Met Studio on the campus of Indiana University. This has been episode 1 of 4 of AI&U, Navigating the New Frontier, with guest host Dr. Kevin Jones. The production team for this episode of State of Inquiry includes Scott Carmichael, Eddie Stewart, and Nate Wrigley. The Director of Content at Indiana Public Media is Eric Bolstridge. We welcome your feedback and ideas. Reach us at ipm.org. To support this podcast and the mission of Indiana Public Media, visit ipm.org/donate. And find more podcasts from Indiana Public Media by visiting ipm.org. Thanks for listening.